Hello everybody, welcome to EPG Pathshala, and today we are going to talk about population and resource relationship. I am Dr. Seema Mehra Parihar, who has been teaching resource geography for last 30 years and just love this subject. And of course by now what you've learned that resources are not they become, and they do not become for whom, for people. And now what we are going to do today is to understand the relationship between population and resource. This is divided into two chapters, one would be a subsequent chapter. After studying this unit, you should be able to have a theoretical understanding of population and resource. Remember your Malthusian concept, and you're going to do that. You're also going to theorize the explanation for the optimum population, overpopulation and underpopulation. Besides this, you're also going to understand ways to achieve optimum population and effects of overpopulation. It's a very important lesson because it's the people, you and me, who make a resource alive. Keywords are carrying capacity, population growth, development, food supply, preventive checks, positive checks, and of course capital. Before starting this lecture, let us celebrate the relative slow pace of population growth. Imagine I'm asking to celebrate. Why? Because today what is happening is that the population is increasing but slowly than what happened in the recent past. 10 years ago, the global population was growing by 1.24% per year. Today, it is growing only by 1.18% per year, and that's a good sign. We have an additional 83 million people annually adding. In the time frame of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the world population is projected to increase by more than 1 billion people, reaching 8.5 billion in 2030. Do we have a place? That's something we're going to learn. Global population is projected to increase further to 9.7 billion by 2050 and 11.2 billion by 2100. And that's what the United Nations statistics says. 60% of the global population lives in Asia, 16% in Africa, 10% in Europe, 9% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the remaining 5% in Northern America and the Oceania. Imagine, in case if you look at this figure, you'll remember that it's quite diverse. You have too many people living somewhere, you have less people living, and that's the whole crux of this chapter. We are talking today about this symbiotic relationship. Whether it's symbiotic also or not is a big question mark. The whole universe is full of neutral stuff. That's something, remember your Zimmerman's model. And when these neutral stuff functions for the particular purpose, it is termed as resources. The universe is a huge resource container, open for human use and of course cooperation and syncing with our ecology. Earth is the only planet of universe where living species survive. The survival and sustainability of Earth are dependent on these resources. There are approximately 8.7 million species on this earth, in which we are one of them. Imagine we are one of how much? 8.7 million species. Yes, so we should feel very special. Resources are described by human population as per the utilization and functionality. Human has variety of needs and aspirations, individually and collectively, which may change in terms of time and space. And as these are behaviorally perceived by them, we must remember and go back to the Zimmerman statement which said, yes, by now you all know it, resources are not they become, through human appreciation and extraction for use. You and me are so important, and that's something which is strongly supporting the argument of population and resource relationship. Because the functionality of resources vary through human needs, wants and demands, population growth, technology, knowledge, culture are the ones which impact the decision process. And this works, as we said, in a space and time framework. According to the World Population Review of 2017, the top 10 most populated countries are China, 1.38 billion people live there, India, United States, Indonesia, Brazil, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Russia and Mexico. Let's now look at India. That is, a population on 31st August 2017 was 1.3 billion, 134298316. So many people are there, you are just one of them. One of every 6 people on this planet live in India. And between the 2001 and 2011 census, the country grew by 17.7%, adding 18.15 million people. The country has doubled in size in just 40 years and is expected to unseat China as the most populated country in the next couple decades, which is not a healthy sign. The country as a whole has a population density of 387.9 people per square kilometer, 1004 square mile. That it is huge, which ranks 31st in the world. In Mumbai alone, the city, which is right now flooded, the population density is 21,000 people per square kilometer. Imagine so many people in one city. That may be country. The carrying capacity is the key thing. In the year of 1900, the population of Earth was approximately just 1.6 billion. 100 years later, the population crossed over 6 billion, and currently it is 7.5 billion. As per United Nations Population Division, world population will likely surpass 9 billion, 9.5 billion in 2050. That means touching roughly 10. Imagine, do we have a place for it? So it's very important that we need to understand all those factors, including size, endowment of resources, social structure, and especially the stage reached in its economic development. The consideration of the rates of population growth is so important today that the population density is something which we all numerically find out that how much resource is there, how much economy is, whether too much or less, and that's the major question today. We understand that due to exponential growth of population continuously need to increase the earth carrying capacity in terms of resources is getting reduced. There is an inverse relationship. Technology also has helped to increase the earth's carrying capacity. For example, gas powered equipment farm and produce will definitely more food, but the medical advancements and all that will also help people to increase their longevity. But do we have a place on this planet for this? Do you know how important are resources in terms of development? Of course you know it, because the more money you have, you go for the luxury items of food, clothing, shelter, and all those other aspects of development parameters. We have change in the living style, but that is adding on to the burden. Do we actually want development and burden to go hand in hand? That's something which I want you to ask and introspect within. The maximization of all available resources, whether it is natural or unnatural, then no country can be termed developed, because none can demonstrate completely efficient use of all its assets. Optimal utilization is there, but are we doing it? That's the big question mark. Therefore, the development can be measured in terms of per capita national product, that is, per person production value of all goods and services of a given country or region by its population in 1 year. But do you think, are you contributing? My question is that per capita national product is an index to individual levels of living that reflect the state of economic well-being. And my friends and my dear, all of you, the ones who are watching, I want you to ask yourself genuinely, are you contributing? Are you helping? Can we call you a resource? That's a big question. Please contribute. Resources can't be easily measured and evaluated, of course. Every society and culture groups have their own needs, their traditions, and aspirations, starting with big A. There are no simple indices of overpopulation or optimum population or underpopulation. Imagine simply there is a small home where the salary coming home is less and you have 10 people, and there is a big home where the salary is too much and you only have one child. Which one is the one where the carrying capacity is more? Of course you know it. Poor person would be trapping onto more resources. Let's get into the Malthusian perspective. Yes, I'm talking about the same Malthus, Thomas Robert Malthus, which you have been studying right from the school days. He is an English demographer and a political economist, and has become the best known for his influential views on population growth. He was the second son of 8 children. He was well educated, 6 of whom were girls. He was educated. Malthus came into the prosperous family, therefore he could get his education, and he interacted with big philosophers like David Hume and an acquaintance of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Had good education. Between 1766 to 1834 he was there. He propounded that view in 1834, remember, and today we all are agreeing to that. The principle of population that's published in 1798 was one treatise of document which today also we all are following, and we all are agreeing to it, and that is so wonderful. Or sad. Of course sad. He believed that there was a limited optimum population size in relation to food supply, then an increase in population beyond the point would lead to decline in living standards and to war, famine and disease. Aren't we having enough wars, famine and diseases around us? It's somebody who said that so many years back. Food is of course very essential for all of us to exist, and he also said that the passion between two sexes also is something which is going to increase, and consequent of that the population is also going to increase. The effects of these two unequal powers must be kept equal, but we have seen it's not happening, definitely not happening. Population growth is something which is happening in geometric ratio 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and a subsistence increase only in an arithmetic ratio 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Imagine resources going in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's growing in 1, 4 and 6 and all that. Of course the balance, how can it exist? So there is going to be an increase by 256 times of its original size in 200 years. Subsistence would increase only 9 times of its original size in 200 years. Malthus believed that two of man's characteristics essential to maintenance of life, the need for food, the passion between sexes, were immutable. They were natural laws and were all antagonistic. The widening gap between population and subsistence will increase man's tendency to press upon the means of subsistence. You cannot go without subsistence. Can you go without food for how many days? And with the result, the society gets divided into two sets of people. Big divide. The rich, which are called haves, and the poor, which are called have-nots. And they together give rise to a capitalist setup. The rich, who are the modes of production, earn profit and accumulate capital. You agree to it? Sometimes feel jealous also. And with the increased capital, they enhance their consumption, but do not increase their population for fear of decline in their standard of living. Isn't it something which is happening today also? In today's time, people are talking about DINK. What is this DINK? Double income, no kid. How was Malthus aware about it? That's a big question. People are talking about one child, in case the ones who are having enough. I can't have a second child because I'll not be able to give him or her good education. Malthus said that so many years back. And through their increased consumption, they create effective demand for certain commodities, those rich people, and it generates more of production. Malthus defends the capitalistic setup society. He defends it, remember that, on the ground that if capital was to be distributed among the poor, it will not be available for investment in the modes of production. Modes of productions are of course, because we all remember even Zimmerman, resources are not but they become. And even you remember, the rich will continue to grow richer and the poor constituting the labor class poorer. So that divide is going to be widened. Of course, we don't want it. The increasing gap between the population and resources shall ultimately lead to the point where misery and poverty shall become inevitable. Malthus said so. He did envisage the operation of prudential checks. According to him, prudential checks could be postponement of marriage was one of them and would continue to be the chief preventive checks. You marry later, you'll have less children. Malthus did not believe that the preventive checks such as delayed marriages, moral restraints, etc. would so reduce man's rate of reproduction that the positive checks would not operate more or less continuously. He was not convinced that any reforms in man's institution were likely to do much to enhance man's happiness. I don't know whether that's true, but he felt so. Let's hope it's not true. He believed, however, good that the human institutions may become and they would mitigate the positive checks for a short while, just a short while. Now you must be interested to know the names of the countries. India, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, United States, Nigeria, Sudan, Niger, Haiti, United States, China, Arizona, California, Uganda and Zimbabwe are all overpopulated. Overpopulation may occur either at national level or at regional level. And that's something which is so much there and we need to work towards it. Of course, we all do not want an overpopulated place. But again, what happens is that sometimes we find that they're uncommon to find islands also which are there. You know, islands, that means, and there are countries like Japan, Belgium, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, etc. Java in Indonesia offers a classic example of regional overpopulation. Regional overpopulation is when confined to rural overpopulation, and when concerned with the industrial region is known as industrial overpopulation. And we know that is there because people get attracted to these places. Rural overpopulation may be attributed to rapid natural increase of rural population, uneven distribution of agricultural land, mechanization of agriculture, limited development of non-agricultural sector in countryside, and non-resilience of agricultural sector. All these are the regions which contribute to rural overpopulation, and this is so very common in the developing region, the area of the third world. The resources of the developing world being limited, the problems being enormous, the priorities had to be different. You can't have a common framework where you all can have just decide and work on, yes, this is the way that we need to work towards reducing the population number there. So what we need is that, Clark considers industrial overpopulation less obvious on the plea that industrial labor is much more resilient than agricultural labor. But this may not be the case. We have seen in a country like India, you may find that the farmers also react in a very different way. So there are a lot of problems of overpopulation. For example, because of that, you have inadequate fresh water for drinking, sewage treatment, affluent discharge. Some countries like Saudi Arabia use energy expensive desalination to solve the problem of water shortage. Depletion of natural resources, especially fossil fuels, coal, petroleum and natural gas, we know will create problems. Increase in the level of air pollution is happening in so many places. Soil contamination, noise pollution is also happening in industrialized places. Government regulations and technological innovations are required, and that too the ones which can be implemented. Many third world countries simply lacking the economic infrastructure base to prove a rising standard of living for most of the people, especially in Africa, the Arab world and the parts of Latin America. When the country is industrialized and wealthy, you feel happy, but the government regulations have to be strict. Why? Because the need is too much. We do not want disparity. We do not want to feel sorry for the human being like you and me. Infrastructural base has to be strengthened. Standard of living for most of the people, especially in Africa, the Arab world and parts of Latin America is so bad. We need to check it. Deforestation, loss of ecosystems, atmospheric oxygen and carbon dioxide balance, delinking. There are approximately 8 million hectares of forests are lost each year. There are changes in atmospheric composition causing global warming, irreversible loss of arable lands and increases in desertification. It can be reversed by adopting property rights, and this policy is successful even while the human population continues to grow. Illegal immigration to the developed world on an unprecedented scale is really creating an unprecedented demographic and political problem in Europe and United States. Yes, even for the developed countries, it's creating a problem. Even the controlled and legal migration of talented and well-educated people from the third world to the developed world denudes of its limited skill base. Mass species extinction from the reduced habitat in tropical forests due to slash and burn techniques. Sometimes are practiced by these shifting cultivators, especially in the countries with rapidly expanding rural population currents, the rate of extinction of too many species. Every year, 140,000 species are getting extinct. That's something the international report says that. And we all need to take care of that. High infant and child mortality, high rates of infant mortality are also resulting in poverty. Developed countries with high population densities have low rate of infant mortality, we know it. Increase the number of hemorrhagic fevers and other infectious disease from crowding, lack of adequate sanitation, clean potable water and scarcity of available medicine, of course will decrease the number of population. Serious starvation, malnutrition or poor diet with ill health and diet deficiency diseases are all of the overpopulated regions. Rich countries with high population densities do not have famine. Poverty coupled with inflation in some regions and a resulting low level of capital formation is a dream there. Poverty and inertia are aggravated by the bad government and the bad economic policies. Low birth weight is still even today, even in the time when the medical facilities are there, seriously exists. Unhygienic living conditions for many based upon the water resource depletion, discharge of raw sewage and solid waste disposal is also there. And all this elevate what? Crime rate. That also increases, and we all need to work towards finding a solution towards it. Warfare also is increasing. We need to curb this. So this is something which is so much important. So that means, what have we learned by now? We should try and we should check as much as possible to follow all those practices which in a way will try to check and make region not so much overpopulated. But again, at the same time, we cannot deny overpopulation is a reality and India is going to surpass China in years to come. Let's come to the second situation. Is that a right situation, which is called the underpopulation? The basic understanding of underpopulation is population below optimum population. Optimum population, right population, over and above. When the population of an area is too small for full utilization of the territory's resources, it is said to be a situation of underpopulation. That's also not good. And all these resources of the areas that are there, your existing population without lowering the standard of living or creating either unemployment or underemployment, again is a problem. The relative underpopulation is more common than the absolute underpopulation. Now what is this? Absolute underpopulation is rare and occur only in completely isolated scenarios, where the degree of replacement of population is less than unit. The relative underpopulation, on the other hand, shall occur due to inefficiency of resources development. The phenomena of underpopulation may be caused by high mortality rate and could be rectified by improving medical facilities and thus reducing the mortality rate. There will not be enough people to exploit all resources of country when population are below optimum. Imagine you are having burgers around you and you only have 2 people to eat. There are 100 burgers, smart burgers, tasty burgers, but there are 2 people to eat that. So what will happen? It's underutilized. Is that a right situation? You have gold stored in a big room and you only have 1 person as a consumer who will wear. So that's a question. So due to this, what will happen is the per capita income and population also has to be balanced. Due to the outward migration, we find that UK is a region which is with underpopulation. On a global scale, when making comparison, there does not seem to be any direct correlation between population density and an underpopulation. For example, Brazil is overpopulated. It has a population of 2 persons per square kilometer, whereas portion of California may have additional carrying capacity with over 500 people per square kilometer. It is related to the amount of available resources. So now, I know you all have become smarter in learning. You all understand and you all appreciate Malthus' theory, that how he visualized at that time. So that's one. Second, you have learned about the concept of optimum population, an ideal situation where we want the way we want the world to be. Number 2, you have also learned about the underpopulation, where the resource gets underutilized. That's again not a very good sign. And then you have also learned the concept of overutilization of resources, overpopulation. And that's again one of that sign where lies India, Bangladesh, and all other countries, that's again is a problem. What we need is an optimal population theory critical approach. And we also all need to remember that we have to create a situation where the supply and demand of resource and the population and the carrying capacity is something which is going to guide us and take this world to a stage of sustainability. Take care of this your planet Earth. You and me can only make a difference. It's not somebody from outside who will make a difference. Thank you very much.